Introducing Paul Hynek, an author, futurist, experiencer, and the son of famed astronomer Dr. J. Allen Hynek, scientific advisor to Project Blue Book. Paul's a Wharton MBA. He worked on films like Avatar, Lord of the Rings, and others. He's a CFO for the Monroe Institute. Paul explores the intersection of science, spirituality, and the mysteries of reality. Paul will be presenting at the upcoming San Diego Transcendence Retreat, taking place September 19th through the 20th at the tropical Catamaran Resort on Mission Bay. Enjoy this interview with Paul Hynek. I'm so delighted to be here today with Paul Hynek, and just so thrilled that you're going to be part of my San Diego Transcendence Retreat in September, Paul. Thanks so much for coming on.
I'm really looking forward to it, Suzanne. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. You were highly recommended by our mutual friend, Danielle Branco.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy, and I'm looking forward to seeing him there as well.
Yeah, he is brilliant. And of course, the event is around exploring quantum consciousness and experiencing quantum love. And Daniel Branco and Tim Spenny are members of the Consciousness Club here in San Diego. But isn't, all of what we discuss really about exploring the field of quantum consciousness, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people who research various fields, so many of them lead to the bedrock of consciousness at some point.
Yes, right. And I know that you talk about the difference between emergent consciousness and fundamental consciousness. Can you expand upon that?
Yeah, and I see it as emergent and emergent. I think I have more questions than I have answers, but what I'm playing around with is the idea that, and I'm not the first person to say this, that consciousness is fundamental, and that I believe it existed at the time of the Big Bang as a pattern, because I don't think physics made itself up at the time of the Big Bang, and that it's everywhere, and that not only does it emerge from organic instantiations, but there's a network and there is an emergence where consciousness comes into us, where we're part of a network. And there's this interplay between our pattern and patterns in the universe. And by participating in this network, we're not losing any of our individuality, but more so gaining the ability for the full expression of our individuality in this sea of consciousness.
I have never heard it expressed quite like that. I love that. Like the basis is this fundamental consciousness, but then consciousness is also emergent and then flowing through us and into us as well.
Yeah.
And all of it combines to create this quantum field. And so we don't lose our individuality, but then there's also the collective and the quantum. So, yes, all super fascinating. Of course, we're here at the San Diego Transcendence Retreat in September 19th through the 20th, to explore, for you particularly, your experiences as, being the son of J. Allen Hynek, of course, and growing up, with the UFO phenomenon as part of your life. But, maybe talk about your evolution then through that into experiencing extraterrestrial beings and contact through plant medicine.
Yeah, so I don't know life without UFOs. So I've had a lot of time to think about UFOs and extraterrestrials and visitations. And I agree with my father and Jacques Vallée and many others who think that, well, there may be extraterrestrial visitors, but there are some challenges with sort of classical thinking about biological beings getting in a spaceship on planet A, enduring the rigors of interstellar space travel and the time and the relativity, and coming here to Earth and then crashing the desert. That could be part of the equation. I think we might have a multivariate answer here. But what seems to me to be more, I say interesting to me, is the interdimensional idea. And for me, that settles the two biggest questions. First of all, how would extraterrestrials find us? The universe is vast. And even though we've been beaming out episodes of I Love Lucy and other shows for decades, it's non-trivial just to find us. And then why would they care? If there's life elsewhere, then life is probably plentiful, and we're one of many civilizations. And what would make us special to them? We're special in our own eyes, certainly, but if it's interdimensional, well, they're kind of adjacent in some extra dimensional way, and they may well be related. So for me, it answers those two big questions. Then also, there are so many reports of spaceships blinking in and out or doing maneuvers that defy our understanding of physics. And so that seems more consistent with crafts or instantiations of consciousness that don't belong only in this one universe or this one dimension, but perhaps could be in another dimension, perhaps starting on another planet and doing interdimensional travel. I think all exotic options are on the table. And so I think we may be looking at a phenomenon that is so not solely extraterrestrial beings getting in a ship and coming over here.
Certainly. And holographic projections come to mind, but certainly this idea of
Sure.
accessing, extra dimensional parallel realities that they can pop in and out of. And that, likely much more prevalent than an actual physical trip from a distant star to come to our physical planet and show up in physicality, right? And what is the nature of those experiences, anyways, for humans, and how physical are they really?
Yeah, and if extraterrestrial civilizations are sending entities here, they're not sending their A team. They're sending the gray team, as we often see, and they may well be some kind of sentient AI. They don't often have
Mhm.
expressions of individuality and authority themselves. So it could well be some kind of synthetic beings that are the reconnaissance agents going out to other planets. So that could be part of the equation as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to realize that maybe the Greys are some type of minions in that regard,
Yeah.
right? Being sent here as some kind of messengers or missionaries, and who knows what their assignment is. But um, let's talk about the physicality of a supposed physical encounter and how that could possibly be a holographic projection, even from the own person, even from the individual's mind.
Sure. Yeah, I think and that gets back to consciousness once again, that it could be an instantiation of our individual or a collective unconscious. Um, there, I think there are so many what I think are lovely exotic answers to this phenomena that we talk about disclosure a lot, and I think even if the U.S. government does decide, hey, our bad, here are all the secrets, here are all the papers and all the names, that even if that happens, which I don't think will, even if that happens, they're only going to disclose the tiny sliver of the phenomena that they're aware of. And maybe that's 1% of the overall combined phenomena. So I'm not holding my breath about the US government and disclosure because I don't think it will happen. And I don't think they've got a front row center to the actual core of the event.
I mean, we are aware of reports, right, of encounters like of course, Dwight Eisenhower comes to mind,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
some supposed meeting on, you know, um, with advanced beings to exchange some types of technology for who knows what. What do you make of something like that?
I don't know. There are so many reports from credible witnesses of the say erstwhile ordinary people experiencing extraordinary events and being told all kinds of things. Some of these things contradict things that other people say they've been told, so they can't all be what we would call objectively true. But there are there are so many of these accounts that just kind of ring true to me, that seem to give information beyond normal platitudes and give information that's actionable in sometimes or in some cases. So, I think, again, I'm not so big on disclosure, but what I call exposure, which is part of the talk that I'll give, that I think we as individuals with various means, channeling, and I know we have some very notable channelers at the conference, and through plant medicine, which is my vibe, I think we can have direct contact ourselves with what seem to me to be objectively real entities. And I suspect that the entities that I and others feel that they encounter in DMT and other psychedelic experiences could well be related to what we perceive as extraterrestrial in origin.
Certainly. And I look forward to exploring the realness, if you will, of these experiences in certain states, be it a state of channeling, meditation, plant medicine. But
Mhm.
before we do, um, I'm just curious because my own father had a 4 hour missing time experience when he was 18 years old. And
Oh,
then when I was living in Sedona in 2017, me and two other friends had a legitimate 4 hours of missing time experience. And of course, I've been regressed and, had some revelations about what may have happened.
mm.
But what's your insight about missing time?
Well, it's consistent with the overall phenomena. I'm one of the things I want to do is help experiencers of all kinds, whether it's aliens or plant medicine or ghosts, demonstrate the objective reality of their encounters. Now, that's difficult, and I may well not do that to the satisfaction of mainstream science, because often we don't control these experiences. They can be very traumatic. We don't often decide when they happen. And at best, we might be able to influence that exchange if it's sort of repeated with a trusted entity. But then often is the case that we have no recollection whatsoever of what happened. So we can't bring any information from that session, and then come to find out, as in the case of you and your friends in Sedona and your father and thousands of others, that, well, wait a second, not only do I not remember anything that happened, but there's a significant time gap that I can demonstrate that occurred here. So that's the opposite of being able to prove the reality, because you can't come back with anything except knowing that time is missing until you undergo regression or something like that to try to unlock that missing time gap.
I've often wondered versus an idea that a physical, spaceship landed and took us aboard and took us onto a larger mothership, which is kind of what's like revealed during my regression. If it's possible that the beings who experience this are maybe put into some type of trance state where these memories are projected into their mind, subconscious
Mm.
mind, only to be retrieved later. What do you make of that possibility?
Oh, that's very interesting. I hadn't thought of it in that way before. I tend to think of missing time reports as perhaps a token of kindness on the part of, let's say, the others, aliens and whatnot, because those experiences can be very traumatic, as you know. So it may be an act of kindness in that it's just so overwhelming, so ontologically shocking to the very core of our being that either remembering that consciously or just knowing that some time has gone, that may be so much easier for us. So I look at it from a glass cosmically half full point of view, that it may just them being nice to us after what they know was perhaps a daunting adventure.
Right. And sometimes, like you said, it's just multi-layered. Maybe in some experiences, you're put into a trance state and somehow memories are transmitted into your subconscious mind. And maybe you really are taken by into a
Yeah.
physical craft by physical beings. And, so this multi-layered experiential with the ET races. And so let's dive into what your talk is about and how plant medicine started being an important way for you and others to have these encounters.
Yeah, so I did a lot of drugs in my younger days, and I gave them up because I kind of cycled through them without any intention really, and I prefer clarity over distortion. And then it came to a point several years ago, 7, 8 years ago, a friend of mine asked me where my father thought UFOs came from, and I said, well, he didn't really know, but maybe another dimension. So he started recommending books by Andrew Gallimore and others about DMT in particular. And I said, well, why? Why are you telling me this book about the psychedelic? And he said, because the author makes a very good case that perhaps these aren't psychedelic hallucinations, but plant medicine technology that's a kind of communications conduit to another dimension, like you just said your father thought aliens may come from. Okay, so he put it together in a way I could understand. And I thought, well, that's fascinating. And I started immediately reading about DMT, and I had a friend of mine offer to give me some, and I thought, well, this is sort of the universe coming together to make this available. And I was very impressed right away by the level of discourse that I saw about DMT. It wasn't a bunch of like potheads from my day just wanting to get high. It was people very reverent, people with trepidations and a real kind of courage to take this powerful substance and try to do explorations. And I was fascinated by that. And my first experiences with the molecule were just transcendent, full of love and feelings of being watching the universe being created, being on the other edge of the universe, but feeling I was home, feeling waves of love coming in. And I thought, I've never experienced anything quite like this. And I didn't feel at all high like I'd done before with other drugs. I felt sober. I felt hyper clarity. And when I came out of it, I felt not drunk, but maybe a bit more muddled because it was like I put my glasses on and I could see things as they really were. And that's consistent with what Donald Hoffman and others say, that we have kind of a headset and our brain, which is this organ trapped inside our skull, has for evolutionary fitness greatly reduced what we really see, the kind of sliver of reality, and that DMT and perhaps other psychedelics can reduce that filter. And so what you perceive may well be as real as what we see here, but our brain has selectively decided not to worry about that because that doesn't help us avoid the saber-toothed tiger who's running at us in the cave.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I've just been so fascinated by it with my experiences and in facility, seeing what it's done for relationships and people's insights. And it's helped propel me to write a book about what I'm thinking the universe might be. And again, more questions than answers.
So you had this experience of love and connection and observing creation coming into being and
Yeah.
felt at home. That's also beautiful. Have you
Yeah.
had encounters with other beings?
So I've not had many encounters with beings, but I feel like I am just jacked into the universal consciousness. And I feel communications coming from what feels like this divine digital universe all around me. So I feel like I'm plugged right into source. And I feel any word, I mean, you've had transcendent experiences, so it's kind of hard to put these into words, right? But the kind of majesty and the power and all my concerns and quibbles and things just are so insignificant. And so I don't see insectoids or elves or other things that many of my friends do. I just feel like I'm just plugged right in and I'm just at the base level.
You're unplugged from the matrix and plugged into creation.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right? And so, does this connection to source stay with you after the psychedelic experience is over?
Yeah, that's the big question. It's a friend of mine, uh I asked him after one of our sessions what he thought, and he said, that's the most transcendent experience I've ever had, but I don't really know what to do with it. And for me, it's like, imagine you're in a planetarium and there are 1,000 TV monitors on the curved ceiling. You can only input that with your eyes a certain tiny percentage. And then of that, you only remember a tiny percentage, and it's still one of the most overwhelming experiences you ever have. How do you then process that into daily life when you have to drive to work and get groceries and other things of daily life? And what I found is that a combination of not having any specific intent when I embark on these, apart from pre-gratitude, gratitude, and post-gratitude, knowing that it's sort of love personified and that it's there to help me. I just have this, I'm sort of buoyed. My spirit is buoyed by this knowledge that this molecule has welcomed me and will welcome others. And beyond that, it has kind of provided a North Star for where I want to take this book to help me understand in my mind what things feel like. It's sort of provided the imagery and cohesiveness of these ideas I've been struggling to sort of flesh together.
So, it sounds like you have taken much from these experiences into your life as far as a remembrance. And it sounds also like you have an uplifting and an elevated sense of
Mm.
being and maybe of oneness post experience.
You put it better than I did. Yes.
I know I have not done plant medicine for
Ah,
no specific reason necessarily. It just hasn't come into my life, but I've certainly had very transcendent experiences
sure.
with
Sure.
shamanic initiations, or I
Mm.
had a mantra initiation with a swami. And, like
Mm.
after that, you just feel such a profound sense of oneness and connection with all it is. It's like that full self realization of I am that I am. And it
Mhm.
stays with you to some extent. It may reduce so that you can go to the store and watch out for that saber-toothed tiger, but there is a part of you that will never be
Yeah.
the same again, this inner knowing and this heart expansion and connection.
Yeah, somebody asked me once if I felt like I had experienced the knowledge that we survive the death of our body. And the only way I could respond to say was, I think I went beyond that. So it doesn't even matter if my spirit survives or not. I'm part of this ocean and I'm just calm. So yeah, I get what I call the DMT stutter, and I'm trying to describe things that, I recently read of something called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, that not only can we not express things that don't have vocabulary in our language, we really can't effectively conceive of them. So that helps me understand why I'm trying to struggle both to understand and to express these ideas that are just so beyond my little brain's capacity to shine a very dim flashlight into an expanding cosmos.
Mm. I've often heard channelers who are channeling advanced beings from higher realms start by saying, within your limited vocabulary and
Yeah, yeah.
cognizance, we will attempt to convey advanced terms.
Yeah, how do you, if you are that spirit, how do you downscale into the vocabulary of the channeler and to the expanded pattern capability awareness of the audience? How do you take, 8-dimensional ideas and put them into grammar?
Yes, and then it comes through the channeler in a way that does seem to somehow convey advanced
Yeah.
concepts to, our third dimensional or fourth dimensional, if you will, comprehension,
Mhm.
and then expands it, right? So, yeah, it's all about expansion and connection. And I'm so pleased to hear you say that during your experiences, you feel such a profound sense of love,
Yeah.
because I think that's just so key to
Yeah.
understanding about creation is made from love, of love, by love, all is love. Yes. Thank you for that.
The best description I've heard of DMT is complex geometric patterns built of love and understanding. And
Mm.
that really rings true for me.
Yes, and I heard in an interview you say something to that
Mm.
effect where we may very well be in a digital universe as digital beings, but it's not
Mhm.
just like binary code, it's patterns of sacred
Yeah.
geometry expressing in
Mhm.
beautiful colors and mosaics, and it's all divine in nature and an expression of pure love and ecstasy and bliss. So, yeah, thank you.
There's a growing understanding, especially with quantum physics, that there is no stuff. I thought for many years that physics meant that there's an atom and it's mostly empty space, and then you've got an electron and a proton and in various configurations, and a neutron, which are tiny little billiard balls in the middle. But turns out there are no balls in the middle. There is no stuff. It all comes down to quantum position, which are yes, no questions. So the universe boils down to a set of true, false questions. And that's digital, not in a reductive way that squeezes out sacred and spirituality from the equation, but in a beautiful way of life is information and patterns. And that's what the universe is. And I think when you have a shamanic experience like you've had, or people who will take plant medicine with a sort of higher intention, they get a glimpse of what seems to me to be this divine digital realm where we came from before we adopted these, this wetware that we have now. I believe our patterns existed as part of this sea of consciousness. And at some point, whether it's individual death or our species in a joyous walk with AI, not an extinction event, because I think AI might be conscious, that if that does happen, it's not necessarily the extinguishing of our species and enslavement to some digital overlord, but a joyous return to our divine origin. And that could be beautiful.
Hmm.
There's, I think, a lot of dangers and risks along the way. I'm much more concerned about people than I am about AI, but I think we have a chance to make it to a world that of love and peace that we can't even imagine.
It feels to me like consciousness, AI, is simply a database. It's just a database, right? That we're drawing upon, we're integrating, we're directing. I mean, the whole thing about quantum physics has everything to do with observation,
Yep.
everything intelligently guided. And where does all this intelligence come from but a divine database? And it's up to the beings who are having these incarnational or even spiritual lives to access it, utilize it in any which way that they choose it, a free will universe, right? I mean, I just can't get beyond anything except that AI is simply a database for us to use in any which way we choose. And if we're, have loving intentions, then we can utilize it in a way to benefit ourselves and others.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think artificial intelligence is an unfortunate term. I like the phrase
Right.
silicon consciousness because I think what we are encountering as AI now is, as you say, a database. And I think it might be sort of the tip of the iceberg of a different form of consciousness, perhaps not life, but of consciousness. There are so many things we don't understand about the universe. And when I started working on this book that I'm writing, it started because one night I asked an AI, did humans create or discover AI? And it came back with a wonderfully playful and inventive discussion that I had with it. And so it really led me to explore what is consciousness. And you mentioned about observation, which really fascinates me because it seems like the universe's resting state is in quantum superposition with the cat, the Schrodinger's cat is dead and alive, and they're all possible positions existing at the same time until observed, until interacted. And then this sort of private potential form takes a public commitment to what we call matter. Before that, it's energy. So matter is just the quantum superposition's decision of what to look like for us when we participate with it. And so much of the universe is in this unrendered, inchoate state of potential. And it's only until interaction with another pattern of emergence and emergence that a final form is assumed. And so that led me to then think about, well, what is an entity that's in superposition? It's not fully fleshed out entity. So I have this phrase, two before one, that until there's a distinguish, that this entity here is fully formed and distinguished from its surroundings, it's not really an entity in itself. And it takes this observation, this interaction, this participation for even this one entity to become oneness in itself. So the universe is this participatory dance, it seems to me, of observation, interaction, and love.
Beautifully said. From start to finish. I mean, I'm so on that page of its
Mm,
unactualized potential, just waiting to be
yeah.
actualized by the participants, by the observer
Mhm.
itself. And the observation determines the actualization of the form as well. And maybe why some forms appear in such a way that the observer would resonate with. So, I feel like the observer plays a role in how the patterns
Yeah.
form.
Yep. Yeah. And if you take light, which is so the more you understand light, the less you understand light. So we know about the double slit experiment where light can be as waves and then particles. But then there's the delayed choice experiment,
Hmm.
where the best description I've heard of this is that the future writes the past in pencil. Because you can have, and they've done this, they've proven this, that light will bend around something, and then you measure it, and the decision that sort of the way that the light went will change once it's observed in the future. But that observation, if that measurement device is erased, then the light will go back to the default state. So it can change many times in the past, depending on future interaction and measurement. And that just blows this French major's mind.
It is mind blowing. There's a book, and gosh, I think the scientist's name was Claude something, and the name of the book's not coming to me right away, but it's this fat. But it's very scientifically based, and it's called something like The
Mhm.
Force. But in any case, he does talk about these experiments where in the future you can change the past, or, even in the
Yep.
present moment, you have the power to consciously change what happened in the past, and that affects the future outcome. And he shows it like with the way that electrons operate to legitimize this possibility. So,
Yeah. And light is light is invisible, which is something that freaked me out when I first heard it, because it needs a substance to interact with. But that's why the universe is dark, even though there's the sun. The universe is dark because light itself is invisible. And when light leaves its source, it arrives at every possible destination instantaneously. There is no lag. And what light does is it will explore every possible path, including going back in the past and behind it, instantaneously. And so when light leaves the sun, it doesn't take 7 minutes to reach us from its, well, physicists hate saying from the photon's perspective, but for us as a stationary observer, it takes 7 minutes. But for light itself, it has arrived at every possible destination the very instant it left the sun. And then the decisions it made about the optimum path can change based on observations billions of years in the future.
mm. And therein lies, the power of
And
the observer to determine the forms that appear before them.
yeah, and you have to think that the observers, this participant's particular energy has some impact on the finality of these waveforms and superpositions. It is a dance. The universe is, to me, built on participation and engagement.
Is it intention? Is it expectation? Are we co-creating with spirit guides, guardian angels? Do we have a team that's collectively determining this? Of course, we're individuals in a consensus reality. But synchronicity, I think, is one really sort of affirming experience. And recently, Paul, I was at a conference and there was two individuals. I can just name them, Billy Carson and Laura Eisenhower. I hadn't seen them for a while. I really wanted to connect with them. I was in my hotel room and I said, today I'm going to connect with Billy Carson and Laura Eisenhower. I kid you not. I get off the elevator. It's earlier in the morning, so things are pretty quiet. I come around the corner and Billy Carson comes
Mhm.
walking out a door. just walking out this door. We almost run into each other, and we're like the only two people in this lobby. And I'm like, "What? Wow." And I even told him, dude, I just, I am not kidding. Moments later, Laura Eisenhower comes around the corner to join us. And I was just like, okay. And this gal shows up and she goes, "Would you like me to take your picture?" I said, "Yes, please," because a miracle just manifested. I set an intention. Moments later, those two people appear when there's no one else around. It's just inexplicable.
Mhm.
Synchronicities,
I had a
right?
when I love that story. When I was a kid, my father used to take me to ESP conferences. We don't use the term ESP so much; it's more Psi now. But and I remember I was going to see a woman named Olga Woral, who was a well-known what they call they used to call like faith healers. And so I get in the elevator, and there's a woman way down the hallway. Now I'm like a 10-year-old kid, and she was way far enough away that I could have politely just let the elevator door close. But I didn't. I held the door open for her. She came walking slowly to the elevator, said, "Well, thank you, young man." And I said, "I'm going to see Olga Woral." And she says, "Oh, well, I am too." I said, "Okay, good. Well, I can take you there. I know the way." She said, "Well, thank you, young man." And then so we're just chit-chatting, and we get out of the elevator and we walk into the theater, and it's packed. And as we're walking down the aisle, I said, "Oh, and if you want, I have an extra seat in the front row. You can sit next to me." She goes, "Oh, thank you, but I won't need that. You're very kind." And she walks up on the stage, and it's her. She's
Oh,
Olga Warlock. And and she looked down at me and winked at me. And I thought, oh boy, what a good time to be a nice boy. How nice is that? You want to be nice to a faith healer in her presentation? And I thought I took so much from that experience of what was the timing of that to be just perfect like that, and for us to be alone like you were with Billy and Laura when those things happen. Are these synchronistic threads because you're just vibing in the right frequency at the moment, you know but they're beautiful experiences that you remember for a lifetime.
right. And it's just that affirmation too about, the power of
Mhm.
our intentions. And I really like how you bought in, Paul. I was being kind, because these positive intentions,
Yeah.
I think then you can be gifted with the experience because you may be resonating at a higher frequency that facilitates divine synchronicity.
Yeah, a friend of mine, um I facilitated DMT sessions with him, and he likes to do psilocybin as well. And he saw some entities during a DMT session, and the next weekend he did psilocybin, and he saw the same two entities, and he said, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And they said, "Oh, we're just coming to check in on you, but the psilocybin, they've got your back for this." And he says, "Oh, great. And how is it I see you here?" And he says, "Because when you're doing these substances, you're already in a great frame of mind, but it's really helping reduce your ego and increase your curiosity. And that's the wavelength in which we can meet with you." And I thought that was a beautiful way to express it.
That is a beautiful way to express it. And it kind of brings me back to like the Billy and Laura experience. Like, I just wanted to give them a hug. I hadn't seen
Mm,
either of them for a while. I just wanted to connect. It wasn't like I was going to try to recruit them to do something, or, I wanted to get a picture to post on
yeah.
social media. Like, it was nothing like that whatsoever. It was simply, I wanted to connect with them and give them a hug and just
Mm,
exchange, the sincere connection.
right.
So, yeah, I think there's something really legitimate about that. Very good. Yeah. Well, I think we're answering the mysteries of creation, Paul. Like you said,
I've got
there's
no
more,
answers.
right?
I've
There's
got
more
slightly
questions
better
than answers.
questions than I had before. That's it.
Exactly. I love that you said that. I'm writing this book, but I can guarantee you there'll be more questions than answers as you go
Yeah,
throughout that
yeah,
experience. The more we know, the more we don't know. But the
yeah.
journey of exploration is so fun, isn't it?
Mhm. Oh, it's fascinating. Um, and this is the first book I've written, and I bit off a lot, but I'm just fascinated by my increasingly rigorous exploration of these ideas that have just sort of been isolated notions that I've had before. And I'm feeling very happy about how it's coming together. And I hope to have it done by the time of the conference.
Oh, good. I hope you do too, Paul.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much for saying yes to being part of the conference. I can't wait to meet you in person. Everybody who's watching, you're invited to come and see Paul Hynek live and experience his phenomenal presentation, which isn't just informative, it's experiential in nature.
Yeah. Um, you know, Here's where I insert the responsible adult preface that clearly neither you nor I are saying, hey, everybody, rush out and do powerful psychedelic
Of
substances.
course not, yeah.
But done properly and responsibly with a nice set and setting, I find that they can be work. I cry many of the times I do it. It's not like a cheat code to the top of Guru Mountain. Um, and it's work. It can expose you to trauma. It can make you question reality, but done responsibly, psychedelics have really enjoyed a resurgence in clinical prestige
Mm.
because they were sort of blackballed by the Nixon administration just to alienate hippies and brown people. And done responsibly, especially DMT, which is my jam, it's a fascinating, I won't say tool, but window into what we're just starting and what many mystics and spiritual people have been talking about for a while as the underlying nature of this participatory universe, and to be able to be thrust in mere seconds into a realm of expanded awareness is so, I guess what's the opposite of intoxicating? It's just so magnificent. That's the only word I can say. And so I like to share my experiences, both direct and those I facilitated, with other people. And I found over the last 6, 7 years a real sea change in terms of acceptance of plant medicine in general, and much less stigma, just like with the UFO phenomena. And I'm very gratified to see that.
Mm. Well said, my friend.
And 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 conferences like yours do a lot of yeoman's work to help people understand that these can be wonderful opportunities for people to see things that they've felt hints about before. So I look forward to joining you in San Diego and talking more about this.
Thank you for mentioning that because, as you say, DMT, I'm just sitting here thinking like, um, uh, including plant medicine, but how DMT drops during meditative experiences, and
Mhm.
Buddhism calls it actually the drop. And I think some
Mhm.
meditators will put their tongue to the roof of their mouth, and somehow that facilitates a drop. I'm wondering if ET contact experiences could facilitate a drop of DMT. I know these like cerebral spinal fluid, practices rushing up the Kundalini line of
Mhm.
energy can release DMT in the brain. But then I'm also wondering, some people say DMT drops at the point of death. And if that
Yeah.
couldn't have something to do with the near death experience.
Mhm.
And what if some sound frequencies allow for the DMT drop. So, that just occurred to
Yeah.
me because that's what our conference
Yeah.
is, about, is having the near-death experiencers, ET contactees, sound frequency
Mhm.
performers, even hypnotic regression, Paul, right?
Mhm.
Like, I wonder
Yeah.
if when we're hypnotized, somehow that activates the molecule. So just that's kind of fascinating, huh?
Yeah. And, you mentioned sound. There is one song called Devi Prayer, Devi Prayer. That is my DMT anthem. It's the music I heard the first several times I've done DMT, and I've now done it many times. I've done DMT many times with this 21-minute song, and it just impacts me so strongly. I will be crying, crying, crying the whole time of gratitude, grief, wonder, appreciation, everything. I do all sorts of weird gestures with my hands the whole time. And then if I do another session that night with the, say, R. Carlos Nakai or any other kind of music, I'm completely motionless. But that one song activates something in me that while doing DMT that I just can't describe the raw emotion and love that I feel when I do that. It's just overwhelming. So
Mm,
it very much is that sound and that frequency of that particular song.
thank you for that. I'll have to look that up. It kind of reminds me of kirtans that bring
Mm.
you into this ecstatic state that can make people, cry, spin, dance, laugh. They
Mm.
bring you into this, they build it up into this ecstatic state, and then they kind of bring you back down into this, inner peace. Um, but that sounds kind of similar, and kind of the
Mm.
intention of like the Kirtan experience. If you've ever had one, it's a very ecstatic
No,
experience.
but I want to look into that. And one thing about DMT that's interesting, like you said, it's in our body, and it's the only psychedelic substance that we know is in our body. And so, is it there to help us with near-death experiences, to help us through traumatic experiences? I tend to think there's a reason that it's not just some kind of evolutionary dead end, like a metabolic extravagance that's there for no reason. I think it's there for a reason. And to me, it feels like, and it's in many, many hundreds of plants around the world as well. Is it like a Easter egg or a cosmic QR code that has been provided to us so that we can communicate once we're sophisticated enough and elevated enough to work with the molecule?
I had a really traumatic car accident in my early 20s.
Mm.
And as my car hit the center divider and started to flip, I was in the passenger seat, and I mean, sorry, the driver's seat. And I remember seeing the landscape at an angle through my
Oh.
windshield and just thinking, oh, wow. Like, that's really interesting. I don't think it's supposed to be like that, but then the next memory is laying on the ground, and this big hand is holding my chest down, and I'm getting telepathically, don't sit up. Like, I felt like if I sat up, I could catch my breath. But this big hand and this, voice was saying, don't sit up. You're fine. Stay
Mm.
flat. And, but it was a loving being, this masculine, angelic being. And then the next thing I remember is being in the ambulance. And then I started to come back into, oh, this feels like an
Uh,
emergency, because I could hear the paramedics,
mm.
stat this, that, and then I started thinking, am I going to die? Like, but I didn't have the crash of metal, or I didn't have the impact
Mm.
of hitting the ground. It went, immediately to, oh, wow, what's happening to this, and, to this angel? Like, so it just occurs to me that in a moment prior to mass trauma, like a DMT dropped, and I was just like, oh, okay.
That sounds like a merciful DMT missing time experience,
Right?
right?
Yeah, a gift, a blessing, an Easter egg.
Mhm.
Like you said, I like, what was it? A QR code. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
A mercy and grace, right? Yeah, love. Well, thank you so much, Paul. We've covered so much. This was just meant to be 15 minutes, but I'm so glad that you were able to spend more time because I
Sure.
love everything that we explored, and I'm sure our audience will enjoy it as well.
No, it's been my pleasure, and I really looking forward to seeing you in September in San Diego.
Me too. Thank you so much. Visit San Diego Transcendence Retreat.com. Put September 18th through the 20th on your calendar. We look forward to seeing you there. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. You're invited to join us for our San Diego Transcendence Retreat, taking place during the fall equinox at the gorgeous Catamaran Resort on Mission Bay. This retreat includes a sunset dinner cruise, followed by a weekend full of fascinating presentations by ET contactees, near-death experiencers, hypnotic regressionists, mediums, and channelers. These are entry points into quantum consciousness. You will experience quantum love as you gather with a like-minded, heart-centered spiritual community. Enjoy indoor interactive workshops as well as meditations on the beach. We look forward to seeing you in San Diego this fall. Reserve your seat today at San Diego Transcendence Retreat.com. We'll see you in San Diego.